Hello and welcome to another edition of Long Beach Treasures. I'm your host, Harvey Keller. Today we're going to be going to the two historic cemeteries here in Long Beach in preparation for the annual Historical Society's Halloween Cemetery Tour. We'll also be visiting Cal Heights in preparation for their annual home tour, which will be held in October. So first, let's go to the cemetery. Hello and welcome to another edition of Long Beach Treasures. I'm your host, Harvey Keller. Today we're at the historic cemeteries here in Long Beach, and I have with me two guests. Barbara Barnes, who is the director of the annual cemetery tour for the Historical Society, and Julie Bartolotto, who is the executive director of the Long Beach Historical Society. So here we are. Barbara, tell us about the cemetery. How did it come to be, and how old is it?
Well, we're not exactly sure how old the cemetery is. The oldest marked grave is right over here. It's Milton J. Neese, who was 17 years old when he was buried in 1878.
So that means for over 100 years people have been dying to get in here?
Right, they have. This used to belong to the Bixbys, and we are assuming that they did bury some of their workers here. He gave the property to the city of Long Beach in 1900, July 10th, 1900. And he also gave land for parks at that time. He has a plot, or the Bixby family have a plot up here on the hill, but no Bixbys are buried there. The last one, George Hathaway Bixby, was moved in 1929, I believe it was. They're all up at the Evergreen Cemetery in Los Angeles. This is a beautiful, beautiful setting here.
Anybody important buried here?
Oh, well, yes, Wilmore, our city founder. He's over where they're watering right now, so I don't think we'll take a trip.
I know the Hartwell's name up there.
We've got the Hartwells, we've got the Wardlows over here, we've got the Jacksons, we've got our first teacher, Carolyn Bush. We have the Jacksons, the Cuthberts, Churneys, Pickles. We've got lots and lots of historic.
You mentioned a potter's field. What's a potter's field?
Well, it's out here in the back, and a potter's field is a place where they buried people who are too poor to buy a grave, or it could be a criminal or a stranger, and they're right now they're not marked. Originally they did have some wooden headstones that over the years kind of disintegrated, and potter's field was it comes from the biblical times of place where they had clay. They're saying that Judas, when he accepted the money for betraying Jesus, gave it all to the potters.
You said the oldest headstone is right here. You also mentioned something about the smallest.
Yes, over here, about halfway, 3/4 of the way down, is a 3-by-6 by 6 inch plaque. It's the smallest one here. We don't know why it's so little. We are assuming that possibly it's ashes, but it's just a little 3-by-6. One day I said, at one of the tours, I said, I hadn't been able to find it. I know it was there, but I hadn't been able to find it. So a little bit later, little boy, Tosin, I found it. So of course we all had to troop over there and find it. And sure enough, it's there.
Tell us about your annual cemetery tour.
Yes, every October, and this year it'll be October 28th, we have a tour, and we highlight several plots here at this cemetery and one next door, which Julie will tell you about that. We tell a story about the people who are buried here, or the family, and we talk about the history of them, what part they played in the development of Long Beach, and it's quite an interesting tour. We have many, many people who are interested in coming. They come year after year, and this is our 5th year.
Can you give us a cost and where to call for reservations?
You can call 495-1210. If you're a member, it's $5. If you're a non-member, it's $8.
And you always have a really good turnout.
Yes, we do.
So reserve early?
Reserve early, yes. We start at 9:30, and the last tour begins at 11:30. It takes about 2 hours to cover both cemeteries. Be sure to wear walking shoes because the ground is uneven, and then there are gopher holes and so on. So
Okay, this is a municipal cemetery. The other one is privately owned.
Right.
What is a municipal cemetery?
well, this belongs to the city. It's run and operated by the Parks and Recreation Department. When it was given to the city in 1900, I always tell you about this. The records were really, really bad because, you know, the people who ran this place before it became part of the city, they thought they just had to do the upkeep. They would sell the lots, and they didn't even keep records of who they sold it to. And so when the city took over and started checking all these things, they found that one man was supposedly buried in 8 different plots. In another plot, 5 people were buried in one, and several lots had been sold many times. So it's been a long process of trying to identify the burials. Of course, if you have a big headstone like these, well, it's not so hard, but it's been a long journey. And then once they got pretty much organized, in 1936, we had a fire that burned many of the records, and so it was back to the drawing board. And they figure about 2,000 people are buried here. This is still an active cemetery, which means that they still bury people here, but all the lots are sold, and if you don't have a lot already, then unless you buy it from an owner, you can't get buried here.
And this is designated historical, am I correct?
It is a designated historical plot. Now, you said, what's the difference? Well, in 1906, as this area was getting full, and the city did own all of this, the city decided they didn't want to be in the business of operating a cemetery, so they sold the other part to private industry, and that's where the difference is, because that is an endowment type of place. Sold the lots, and it still is an active burial cemetery too, although the lots are sold, and it's run by a trust.
So let's go over to the sunny side, I think it's called, part of the cemetery, and Julie, you can tell us all about it. All right, here we are at Sunnyside Cemetery. Julie, tell us about it.
Sunnyside Cemetery is a private foundation cemetery. It was organized in 1906, and the first burial was in 1907. When it opened, it boasted that it had the best in parking and roads and beautiful landscaping. When burials first started happening here, this area was quite different. Today you have a busy Willow Street and some oil wells, but when it first opened, it was quiet farm type land around here.
What's the landmark status of this cemetery?
In May of this year, the year 2000, this cemetery became designated as a city historic landmark.
So both cemeteries now are designated?
I believe that's true, yes. And when oil was discovered in 1921, right up here on Signal Hill, this area changed a great deal. And in 1923, owners of plots in this cemetery came to find timbers being hauled up across their family grave plots to build oil derricks on Signal Hill. And
it's a wonder they didn't try to dig for oil in their family plots.
Well, there are stories about that too. As you can see, there are still oil wells pumping around here, and you can actually still hear them. But in the early 20s, it was surrounded on 3 sides with oil derricks. So the owners actually hired guards with guns to protect the cemetery, to make sure that there weren't other oil workers dragging timbers across their loved ones' graves.
Let's walk up and look at some of the people who are buried here and some of the beautiful headstones. And here we have the mayor of the city of Long Beach. He was mayor from 1924 to 1926. Mayor Roy R. Clark, buried here at Sunnyside Cemetery. Julie, tell me about all the Civil War veterans that are buried up here.
Well, here we are in the Civil War section, and this monument here was dedicated in 1935 by the Grand Army of the Republic. And there are many grave sites here against this side wall of Civil War veterans.
Now, would this have been opened in 1865 at the end of the Civil War?
No, the cemetery opened in 1906 and the first burial was in '07, so this was dedicated later to the people who died fighting in the Civil War, who had previously fought in the Civil War.
So the monuments there of people who were in the Civil War, they were reburied here?
They were veterans. They're veterans of the Civil War. They didn't die in the war. They were veterans who survived the war and came to live in Long Beach and then were buried here.
We had quite a contingent from Long Beach, didn't we?
Yes, yes. Well, they weren't originally from Long Beach, but they did eventually settle here. So, yeah, there's a nice section here.
All right, let's move on. We're standing now in front of the monument to Chief Shrewsbury. He was the first fire chief here in Long Beach, and ironically, he was killed in an automobile accident on his way to answering a fire alarm. And unfortunately, it turned out to be a false alarm. Chief Shrewsbury, when he died, the stores closed down, and it showed that he was highly respected because the whole city turned out, and even Dougherty flew his aircraft over as the funeral services were being conducted. He dropped flower petals during the burial. Okay, Julie, tell me about the angel statue. I hear it's quite significant.
This statue is called Angel of Sorrows, and it was commissioned here for Dr. Rhea when he died in 1907. This statue was made famous by photographer Ansel Adams when he photographed it in 1939. And in 1939, when he photographed it, it was contrast with the angel's serenity, contrast with the industry of the oil wells and derricks in the background. There was beautiful lighting on the photograph as well.
It's still a beautiful monument.
Yes, it is.
Tell us again and remind us again about your cemetery tour that's coming up.
Oh, the cemetery tour will be held on Saturday, October 28th, and it begins at 9:30. You should call for reservations, 495-1210. Tickets for Historical Society members are $5, and tickets for the general public are $8. The last tour begins at 11:30.
Julie, as we've been walking through the cemetery here, I've noticed so many people died in 1918 and 1919. What was significant about those years?
There was a terrible flu epidemic in those years, and it killed many, many people in Long Beach and throughout the country.
So that's why we see so many people buried in those 2 years.
Yes, it is. And right here we see the grave of Jane Elizabeth Harnett, and she's very important in local history here in Long Beach. She was the first person qualified to teach high school in Long Beach. She came here with her family from England, and she taught at Long Beach High School, and she wrote much of the early history of Long Beach that later became incorporated into Walter Case's history books about Long Beach. So basically everything we know from the very early period came from Jane Harnett.
I see the Walker monument is over here. I assume that's still from the Walker family from the Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Yes, it is. Yes, and they have a big monument here. And there are many other nice-sized monuments to very common families in this area.
It's really interesting to walk through here and look at some of these monuments. They're ornate, they're distinctive, they're different, and it's just something you don't see in a cemetery anymore.
It really is, and we really want to encourage people to learn about the cemetery and to respect it, because these two cemeteries have had a great deal of vandalism, especially last summer and over the years, and it was terrible. Headstones were knocked over and chipped and ruined, and this really is a treasure here.
Monuments was really a form of artwork, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, yes, as demonstrated by this Angel of Sorrow.
And I look over there, as I look around, I see so many that really are quite beautiful.
Yes.
Meeting in Long Beach has never been grander. Whether you need space for 10 guests or 1,000, the Grand at Willow Street Center will accommodate them in elegance that meets your high standards. After all, we serve your party one guest at a time. Plan your own function in the comfort of your home by visiting our website at www.thegrand.net. The Grand at Willow Street Center, just off the Lakewood South off-ramp of the 405 freeway. Call today for your free brochure.
This is your chance to get involved and say thanks to our veterans at the 4th Annual Long Beach Veterans Day Parade on Saturday, November 11th. Our Grand Marshal will be the one and only Art Linkletter. To prepare for this special event, we need everyone's support, businesses as well as individuals. You can help make this affair one that says thank you to all of our veterans from every branch of service. For further information, please call my office at 562-570-6137 and help salute those who served.
Welcome back to Long Beach Treasures. Joining me now is Karen Heiberger, who is with the California Heights Home Tour Committee. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
Some of our viewers may not know where California Heights is located. Would you give us some boundaries?
California Heights is bounded by Wardlow Road, Bixby Road, Lime Avenue, and Walnut Avenue. That's the designated historic district at this point in time.
And this is one of the 13 historical districts in the city of Long Beach.
Yes, it is, and we actually are the largest historic district, and currently remaining streets between Walnut up to including Rose and Gaviota are in the process of going through the process to be added to the historic district.
Very soon you're going to have a home tour up in California Heights, so let's look at some of the homes that have been on past tours and some that will be on this year's tours, and give our viewers an idea of the eclectic mixture of homes that are to be found in California Heights.
Okay.
As you look at this lovely Spanish bungalow built in 1925, it is difficult to imagine that it had been neglected for so many years. In only the past few years, the current owners has managed to restore its original elegance and charm. A cool tropical garden surrounds this classic Spanish colonial revival home. An abundance of ferns, birds of paradise, hibiscus, impatiens add lovely color bursts to this dense garden. Notice the bougainvillea also predominates. A classic two-story Craftsman dating back to 1914, this home, like many of the other Craftsman-style homes in Cal Heights, was moved to its present location in 1925. Most of the house remains original, other than the kitchen, which was remodeled in the 1980s. Terracotta tiled roofs and stucco construction are a common denominator in Spanish bungalow-styled homes, such as this one, built in 1927. This quaint home is typical of many California Heights homes. Large homes were not the standard for this neighborhood. They were all rather small to begin with. This classic colonial, built in 1925, is one of the only two colonials built in the neighborhood, and is perfectly typical for its style. A simple square shape with center stairwell, wood siding construction, and broken pediment details above the front door. Originally built in 1925, this Spanish revival began as a two-bedroom, one-bath home, typical of the era. As you can see, the house has been adapted to the needs of a modern, growing family. It is a wonderful example of expansion and adaptation without destruction of the original character. Built in 1924, the modified Dutch colonial bungalow was originally located in Signal Hill. It is believed to have been moved to its present location in Cal Heights around 1933. Notice the lamppost. If we have time, we'll be talking about it in a few moments. More than 10 years after the original subdivision of California Heights, this rambling field Spanish colonial was built in 1936. The modern-day appeal of this home is part of what makes it so inviting. Most of this home has been maintained in its original state. This charming Spanish colonial revival home was built in 1930. Original details in the living room include the tavern oak plank flooring, open beam ceilings, window seat storage, built-in bookcase, and the glass arched windows. And it's difficult to determine which was the addition on this particular home. Originally built in 1933, this Spanish colonial revival style home began as a two-bedroom, one-bath house and has undergone several additions in its lifetime. The current layout is a result of several owners and many years of hard work. This home is a picture example that tasteful remodeling can keep in mind the spirit of the original design and era. When the current owners first rented this house in 1942, the front of this 1924 colonial-styled home had only small cement steps with metal railings for an entrance. There were no flowers in the beds, flower beds, and the property was knee-deep in devil grass. This incredibly charming Tudor gem was built in 1928 by two German sisters who, according to oral history, brought craftsmen over from Europe to build their home. There has been no structural change to this home, and the current owners are slowly preserving the home, bringing in hand-picked craftsmen to restore and make repairs as necessary. This Spanish bungalow was built in 1927. All lighting fixtures, hardwood floors, doors, baseboards, and picture hang moldings throughout is original to the home. There are 3 residents which share a common driveway, and all are considered to be one parcel of land. Built in 1924, this small classic craftsman-style bungalow is typical of many of the California Heights home. Remarkably, no additions have been made to this home, and it remains a mere 888 square feet. Like most small homes of its era, this craftsman boasts a big backyard. Built in 1931, this Spanish colonial revival home is the envy of many weekend gardeners. Its lush and colorful landscape is always picture perfect. Indeed, it should be, as the owner is a landscape architect, and his home is his own best advertisement. When it came to re-landscaping, the owners of this 1922 Spanish-styled home wanted something a little different. After consulting with a landscape designer, they managed to bring a little bit of England to California Heights. The result is a formal English cottage garden, complete with the tranquil sound of flowing water from an extraordinary and unusual fountain. Built in 1926, this English cottage-style home was started out as a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house and expanded over the years to accommodate a growing family. The attic space was converted into the 2nd floor with 2 additional bedrooms and 1 bath. Built in 1929, this English Tudor cottage has been lovingly cared for and maintains all of its original charm. This home retains many of the custom details custom to Cal Heights home built in the 1920s, from the entry door of ribbon-strip African mahogany to the covered ceilings and the beautiful Philippine mahogany windows. Built in 1929, this Spanish colonial revival was purchased from a probate sale and was in need of some tender, loving care. What you see is the final result. In 1989, the owners tackled the gardens, installing a tiled patio complete with trellis and brick walkway. Surprisingly, it's the charm of the Orient that greets you upon entering this 1931 Spanish Revival home. The exquisite collection of Oriental furniture and artwork on display are family heirlooms. Upon entering the living area of this 1928 Spanish bungalow, the warmth of the room encourages curling up in a wing-back chair with a good book and staying a while. This gentleman's club effect was achieved not only with the furnishings, but the painting the room with a golden antiqued paint applied with a ragging technique. Built in 1931, this Spanish colonial revival home is heavily influenced by the Art Deco movement. The Art Deco style shows up throughout this spectacular home in the door hardware details, the stylized sunburst motif window in the entry door, and particularly on the tile of the living room fireplace. Unique to this 1929 Spanish bungalow is the double entry to the home. As you enter the courtyard, you notice the 2 original mahogany plank-styled front doors, one leading to a large living room and dining area, the other to a small breakfast room off the kitchen. The backyard is small but charming, with both a rose and a vegetable garden. This classic 1931 Craftsman bungalow is a perfect example of how homeowners can retain the charm of a historic home while enhancing it with a tasteful addition and contemporary furnishings. Custom built in 1925, this Spanish colonial home has one very unusual feature. It was built around a central open-air courtyard. Local rumor has it that the owner raised birds and had the central courtyard built to be used as an aviary. Rumor has it that the previous owner of this Tudor-style home, built in 1930, were instrumental in helping to create the California Heights Historical District. This home features a stunning black and purple bathroom that retains its original tile, built-ins, and tub and faucets. The current owners have transformed this classical Spanish colonial revival home, built in 1936, into a little bit of Tuscany. Especially dramatic is a newly remodeled kitchen, complete with cherry wood cabinets, new tile, and flooring. It also has an unusual stucco motif. Built in 1929 and purchased in an estate sale, this Spanish colonial revival home and garden have been lovingly restored and updated by the current owners, very typical of the California Heights area. The eccentric bougainvillea-covered entry to this Spanish colonial revival home, built in 1925, tells you that this is no ordinary home. The living room features a barrel-vaulted ceiling, original oak strip flooring, and the original fireplace. Unique to this home are the carved wood pillars separating the living and dining areas. This 1924 California bungalow-styled home has the original oak strip flooring, the original wood screens and front screen door. The windows and door casings are all original. The bay windows that can be seen on the side was added in 1940 as a dining alcove, but now serves as the master bedroom. All right, this gives us an idea of some of the homes that have been on past tours and some of them that will be on the tour this year. So Karen, tell us about the California Heights home tour. This will be your 4th annual.
It'll be our 4th annual home tour, and we will be holding the tour October 15th, and the hours run from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. This year, our major sponsor is John Reynolds with Prudential California Realty. He's been an avid supporter of the tour since it started 4 years ago. And also this year we're offering a box lunch that can be purchased with your pre-sale ticket that's going to be provided by Delius Restaurant. So that will be available at the refreshment house that we've traditionally had on the tour to provide free drinks and free snacks for people to keep their energy level up as they tour the homes.
Will there be a limit on the number of tickets that will be sold, or did you mention that?
No, there will be a limited number of tickets sold because out of respect for the homeowners and respect for the tour goers, we want to keep it a manageable number. So I suggest purchasing your tickets early so you don't miss out.
This has always been an exciting way to spend a Sunday afternoon the past 3 years, and I'm sure that you're going to have another very successful year. I think one of the nice things about the California Heights area are that the homes may be small, but the backyards are quite large.
A lot of the homes have very large backyards. Some of the homes have guest houses in the back that were built when the home was originally built. And people have done wonderful things with landscaping. In past tours, we've actually had some homes that only the yards were on tour, not the interior of the house, but this year we're fortunate enough that the interiors of all the homes are open, including some wonderful landscaped areas.
Karen, I thank you so much for joining me here today, and I know you're going to have a most successful tour. I'll be there. I'll probably be a docent again. I have for the last 3 years, so I'll probably do it again because it's fun and exciting.
It is.
And I would like to thank you for joining us today for another edition of Long Beach Treasures. We'll look forward to seeing you next month as we take another walk through history and go through the Long Beach Museum of Art and discover more Long Beach treasures.